Trails is a trade.
Trails is a trade.
Yes. It's a trade, people. Like your plumber, your carpenter, and it's just like valued. And yeah, I think there's so many people who
Welcome to Trail Effect. I am your host, Josh Blum. Trail Effect is a show that dives into the stories behind trails, the communities that embrace trails, and the people who rely on trails as a way of life. The goal of this show is to turn the stories you will hear from our guests into useful knowledge that can be applied to your community while providing some entertaining and inspirational content. Guests on Trail Effect include trail builders, board members, community leaders, volunteers, and regular people who really enjoy trails. For episode 167, Martha Becton took over as the host of the Trail Effect Podcast to have an open conversation on the topic of women in trail building. Martha brought Erin Amadon, Rebekah Morrisson, and Addie Clayton together for this conversation. This conversation was recorded in person at the 2024 Professional Trail Builders Association Sustainable Trails Conference, which was held at Lake Lanier Resort in Georgia. Cooley Creative is the title sponsor for this episode. They design and build custom websites, as well as help companies with branding, photography, and e-commerce. Cooley Creative was started in Wisconsin, but is now based out of Bend, Oregon. Jared from Cooley Creative is a friend of mine. We've traveled together on multiple mountain bike trips, and sometimes he sends it. For more information about Cooley Creative, head on over to www.dudejustsendit.com. Yes, that's right, www.dudejustsendit will get you to the Cooley Creative website, so check it out. Cattle Mountain Apparel, the brand that was built by travelers, hikers, trail runners, and mountain bikers, with the motto of venture far, laugh hard. While I definitely use Cattle Mountain Apparel for mountain biking, Cattle Mountain is also my go-to choice for daily wear as it is super functional and comfortable. Cattle Mountain Apparel also offers a lifetime gear repair program with the goal of extending the life of their products while reducing waste in the process. If you ever damage any of your apparel, Cattle Mountain will repair it for free for life. By using the affiliate link found in the show notes or on the Trail Effect website, a small commission will come back to the Trail Effect podcast, which helps to cover the cost of expenses for keeping this show going. Now on to the Trail Effect with Martha, Erin, Rebekah, and Addie.
So I'm going to act like I'm Josh Bloom. So welcome to Trail Effect. He has lost complete control over his podcast. My name is Martha Becton with Becton Trails. And I guess I'm the busybody of the trails world now. So we're here in Lanier Islands in Georgia at the PTBA 2024 conference, Sustainable Trails Conference. And it's just amazing. So we just finished our Women in Trail Building session, which is a room full of women in trail building. And it includes people in private industry, land managers, and nonprofits. And we just had a big sesh. So we have a few folks who stayed later. And I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. And then, we're going to kick off just sort of current topics. And it'd be more of a conversation and less of an interview, because I'm not a podcast host. So I'm going to hand it over to Erin.
Thanks, Martha. My name is Erin Amadon. I own Town 4 Trail Services. I'm based out of Maine. Yeah, I'm a private contractor, and I've been in the industry for about 26 years, maybe 27 at this point.
Hey, my name is Rebekah Morrisson. I'm the program director for a nonprofit called Southern Appalachian Wilderness Stewards, and we have a niche of working within wilderness. So we use traditional tools. We also do wilderness monitoring, making sure that our wilderness areas are meeting the qualities lined out in the Wilderness Act.
I'm Addie Clayton. I work for Tahoe Trails. I am a trail specialist. I've been doing trail work for 7 seasons, I think.
And this is where I start giggling.
I don't know what else to say.
Well, so this is where I become the host. So if you guys hear drinks in the background, it's because it's technically happy hour here at the Trails Conference, and we are partaking. And I also noticed that I just donned my NPR Terry Gross interviewer voice, which is ridiculous because I never talk like that in real life.
Yeah, I think once you started talking like that, I was like, what are you doing, Martha?
Erin's like, I've literally never seen Martha talk like this in my life. I will say that I met Addie here last night because she tapped me at the bar being like, oh, are you Martha Becton? And I whipped around and I was like, yes. And she's like, oh, I'm the biggest fangirl. And I was like, oh, how do you know me? Have we met before? She's like, I just listened to your podcasts. And I was like, how did you know it was me? She's like, I recognized your voice. And I just want to tell everyone, like, this is the only place where anyone knows me, and it is so exciting. So thank you, Charles. So we just spent this hour sort of listening and having a conversation around, women in trail building. And, it's not like a total bitch session, but it is sort of a safe space to talk about just things that we see and things that we would like to shift in the industry. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably in trails or trails adjacent. And so, if you're just a user, this might be an interesting thing to listen to because we're kind of talking inside baseball of what it's like, our working environment, which looks different across the country, but it's similar issues, right? Because the industry's not that old. I'm not really sure what to say next, so I'm going to hand it over to Erin. What were some things that sort of popped up to you that maybe were better articulated this year than years past, or just continuing themes?
It's a great question. I think we started off the group slightly different than we had in the past. Like normally, it was a lot about making connections. So we did introductions and where you worked and what were some of the projects that you were excited about. And so this year, we posed a couple of questions of like, how can the PTBA as an organization help bring more women into the industry? And I think a couple of things that really stood out to me were getting younger girls and high school students that identify as female onto equipment sooner and like with tools in their hands sooner and creating those spaces for them, but also having female role models to, ask those questions, create those safe spaces and sort of tell their stories.
And for folks who weren't in the room, a leading thing to that was someone had shared, hey, we've been going to the high schools to elicit folks to come out, get on the equipment, work on trails with us. And we're just realizing like the girls aren't stepping forward. And they're kind of like, what can we do about it? And Rebekah, you shared a really key piece of information. Can you share that here?
I know. That's what I need to remember. I'm like, it's been too long since I spoke. It's going to be a long, awkward pause.
Just make it up. No one cares.
I forget. I'm aware of some research that was done trying to address the gap between young girls and young boys, if we're giving it those two kind of binary categories, in their interest in science and math related fields. And they figured out that a lot of the population seems to get what culture is telling them by fifth grade. And
what's culture telling them?
That girls shouldn't really be in science fields, aren't really suited for math fields, etc. And boys aren't getting that same message. And so this organization that I know of has done outdoor experiential learning with all of those fifth graders to take them out into the woods and do science concepts out there, get them excited about it, get everybody participating. And they found after implementing that program that everybody is more interested in math and science. And so they're not seeing this disparity between young girls and young boys at that level as much.
The exuberance kind of persists beyond fifth grade.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. They think they're capable, they're interested. And I think a lot of times like they hear these messages and then they just aren't interested when really what they're being told is that they're not good at it.
Yeah. I think all of us are self-reflecting back to our childhoods. I'm also a parent for folks who don't know. My daughter's 14 and she's really ready for like a Terry Gross NPR interview because she's had the weirdest childhood. And watching her and her peers all dive in with no awareness of how they're being perceived. And there's definitely that shift, right? Of like, oh, I haven't done this thing and I don't want to look awkward doing it. So how do we kind of crack that open a little bit? Because like for the trails, and again, folks who've been listening to this awesome podcast for a long time, you're familiar that like we have mechanized equipment, we have chainsaws, we have hand tools, and some of this stuff takes a long time to master, but not necessarily, right? And just getting your hands on it, you have to allow yourself the space to learn. So how do we kind of crack that door open? I'm going to put you on the spot. Yeah, Addie. Because Addie and I basically shared life stories last night. But like, you know, can you share some about your experience, just like sort of how you got into trail building, and then just like sort of self-reflecting on like, did you grow up with tools? Did you not? Like, what was this like for you?
So I was introduced to the environmental outdoor recreation world at a very young age. My parents are both caretakers of a private garden, so we grew up on the property. So it was not an odd thing to like see them come in from the end of the day, like covered in mud. That was like, I was like, oh yeah, that's like, it's okay to be dirty. Like, that's not like a bad thing. I went to school in Vermont and I thought I wanted to do environmental education work. So I did an internship with the Adirondack Mountain Club in the Adirondacks of New York.
And what time frame would this be? Like not your age, but like on the calendar.
Oh, I was like a sophomore in college.
And but like, was that 2000s? Like,
it was 2015.
2015. Okay.
I'm a little baby over here.
No. Well, it's contextual because like two of us here, you know, sort of. I turned 18 in 1996.
Martha, I'm pushing past 40.
Showdown, I'm 45. Rebekah, like 33. Okay, so we're spanning here. Okay, so back to you. So
yeah, mid 2010s. Did 2 seasons of environmental education work, and I had a lot of friends on the trail crew, and I was just like, I just gotta try. Just gotta like see if I can do it. I kind of want to like prove it to myself. Also, my dad, because he's never gonna listen to this, but he like was just like, I don't think you can do it. And I was like, well, screw you. I'm going to. That's just gonna make me like try even harder. It was really hard. Like my first season on trail crew.
What was hard about it?
And
I'm not saying that like innocently, but like for you,
physically,
like what
it was
felt
really
hard?
Physically, it was really hard because I didn't have female teachers that could teach me the physics. It was just like the
brute
6
strength.
foot. Yeah. And I was like, hello. Obviously, listeners can't see. I'm a 5 foot to 130 pounds. Like, I don't have a lot of strength behind me compared to the male coworkers that are 6 foot, 200 pounds. So just like learning traditional skills in that context was really challenging. Also, just we were working in backcountry settings. So it's just like hiking far distances, carrying everything you need for a week. And it was, I still have mixed feelings about this because it was like, at the moment, I felt like it was empowering, but also reflecting on it now, I'm like, I should have stood up for myself. So we would like carry the same amount of tools. Like it was clear split. Everything was even. And I was like, yeah, I can do everything that the guys can. And now I'm like not even 30 and my knees are shot. And I'm like, why did I do that? That's not equality.
But you would feel like being a stereotypical girl, though, if you're like, I should carry less weight.
Right. And so it just like, I was like, oh, I'm a part of the team. I'm an equal. Like, I'm not seen as lesser than because I'm a woman. But now working in a company where it's like, it's not like you're valued for your skills, not like your size or your gender or any of that. It's like, oh, it's fine if I do 2 pack-ins if we're like camping 2 miles in the woods. Like, I don't have to, or like I can ask coworkers for help, or I can ask coworkers to like carry tools for me because it's like, that's my max of what I can carry. So I did 3 seasons of trail work at the 80K, very like backcountry traditional setting. And then I transitioned to Tahoe's Trails, where it's a lot more of a variety and a mix. And there's like weeks when we do backcountry stuff, but then there's also time on a machine where you're working in the front country. And it's just like, we kind of do it all. It's been really interesting at this conference. Like there's so many companies that are like, oh yeah, we've got hand crews and we've got like machine crews. And I was like, no, Tahoe's, we do it. And it also design question has come up. It's like, no, everybody just does everything. Like we all wear all of the hats, which I think is really cool. But definitely something I have noticed when I worked at the Mountain Club, it was like a pretty even split gender-wise. again, if we're like using the binary. And onto house, I would say it's like 30% women of like, we've got like a company of 30, and I think we have 5, if you include our office administrator, who is amazing.
Yes.
So she definitely deserves all of the credit.
Right.
But it's definitely like a different dynamic when you're in the field with just like, okay, I don't really know these guys. I'm going to have to go really far away to pee. Or like, oh, I have to like, how do I like balance this dynamic of like, I want to be your friend, but I'm also in charge, and I don't want to be seen as bossy or aggressive or like bitchy or
I'm literally the boss.
Like I've definitely gotten good constructive feedback, but also it makes me wonder, like, would I have gotten that constructive feedback if I was a man? Like being told that I was like,
good job for being assertive today.
yeah, it's just, yeah, it's very reflective.
You also just summed up like our hour worth of talking in here. Great. Like, we're done. Well, so, and we're going to come back to you in a moment, Rebekah, but I'm just thinking like, you know, Rebekah's like, no, I'm good. So for the listener, I would say 3 of us are similar build, and then one of us is a little sturdier, but none of us is a 200-pound, 6-foot guy.
It's okay, Martha. You can say stocky.
So all of us have to use our body mechanics, though, to our advantage, because none of us here can like do really stupid things unergonomically.
I can't do those either.
Period.
Yeah.
None of us can. And so
Why would you?
I wanted to hand the mic to you for a second, although we have like 4 mics set up. It's amazing. I wanted to hand the mic to you for a little bit because, you know, when I took a stone workshop in New York, I did a slow-mo of you showing people how to use physics, right, to sling the sledge in a way that's going to give you a lot more everything instead of just sort of being a circus performer with a sledgehammer.
Yeah, so that's a great video. I actually save it all the time and I show it to people. So I use a 10-pound stone buster when I'm breaking stone, like if I'm making crush. And I think industry standard, most people use an 8-pound. And I'm just like, nope, no thank you. I have no interest in that. It's not quite doing exactly what I want it to do for me. And I'm short, but I am stocky. And so I don't know, somewhere along the lines or, you know, along the way, I figured out if I held the tool, let's see if I can describe this so you can visualize it. So I'm left-handed too, so this will be all confusing for you. So if I hold the tool with the head in my right hand and I have the bottom of the handle in my left hand, I kind of put my left leg forward a little bit and I use that as my fulcrum, like a seesaw. So your 2-to-1 mechanical advantage ratio. You're not really getting any mechanical advantage. You're just getting that movement. And
it's like a pivot.
It's a pivot point. Yeah, that's all it is. And so I'm rocking that up on my knee so it lifts that 10-pound hammer. And I just guide it with my hand. It doesn't go all willy-nilly. And then I just drop it. And as I'm dropping it, I like kind of power squat a little bit. And I just follow it down and I pick it back up and I do it again and again and again because if you've ever made crush.
Repetitive. They made steam power for a reason.
Yeah. You know you're swinging that tool over and over and over again. And it doesn't matter if it's an 8-pound or the 10-pound or like some of the folks that I've worked with in the past, they're like, oh, I got the 12-pound stone buster.
Go nuts with that.
Yeah. But you can swing that all day long, and it's really efficient. It's the same way, like if you're making crush with a 4-pound hammer, you hold the hammer in one hand, and you just lift your hand with the other hand, and then follow it down, and lift and follow it down. So you're not actually like swinging with your wrist. It's not a carpenter's hammer. You're not using your wrist. You're using your whole arm.
You become rigid to protect that gentle, that delicate wrist joint.
You're like hanging on your joints more. So, you know, throughout the years, I've like picked up these little tips and tricks and I share them with everyone because trail work, as you know, like, right, is hard physical labor and you're doing repetitive movements over and over and over again. It's like, how do we protect our bodies and get that strength?
Well, and it's interesting too, because, and by the way, so if anyone's listening who has good axemanship, what Erin just described is similar to highly skilled axe technique. Not quite the fulcrum, but for the rest of the visual it's so you can do it again and again and again with precision and not wreck your body. And Erin and I are also chainsaw instructors, and there's all these body mechanics and ergonomics to running a saw and not wrecking your body. And also, if you're trying to hold the saw out from you versus resting it on your body, you can't saw for very long. Like, no one has the strength to run a saw all that long when they're not doing it correctly. And it's been fascinating. So female technical skill instructors, I tend to feel to share more openly and be more conscientious of some of these techniques because they help everyone. And we talked about in the room today, I'm back to Terry Gross voice. We talked in the room today about showing people how to learn. Right? We're not like born machine operators. I mean, some people are. I'm not one of them. Showing people like, hey, I wasn't good at this. I've had to learn. And here's some things that I've learned to get better with my body and so forth. And like normalizing that to open the door to everyone, but especially folks who haven't maybe grown up using these tools. And Rebekah, you've been out on a lot of the skills training. Okay, so saws. I should let Rebekah explain this, but I'll just talk. So saws is amazing. So they are reinterjecting a lot of lost wilderness skills back into the Southern Appalachians, crosscut, axe work, grip hoist, to do the work that needs to be done. And the way it works is they have a core crew that gets trained, and that core crew leads a larger crew for that project. And Rebekah, you've been out on a lot of trainings. Like, what are some things that you've seen as far as helping people feel like they belong there and they're being taught the skills that are going to like empower them to not only do a good job, but like want to be out there doing this work?
Let me think about that. I can't. Every time. You guys are so natural. I can't.
Just talk. People love it. It's a podcast.
I'm like trying actively not to go into my lizard brain.
Freeze.
Yeah. Gosh, I think it probably, would depend so much on all of our different kind of learning styles and things. But I think some of the like really helpful skills that I've noticed really effective leaders having in helping folks like learn skills and feel welcome is just taking a really good, taking a good amount of time in training folks up, not assuming that they know certain things or don't know certain things without being like patronizing either. I think sometimes it can be really helpful to like ask the group, like, what are your thoughts on how you do this? What's your experience doing this thing? But then also like giving that instruction and then letting folks fail, I think is really helpful. Some folks I think have really struggled in that concept of leadership and really
the messiness of letting people learn.
Yeah.
And like making it comfortable.
Right. And they feel as though if anybody in the group fails, then they fail as a lead, which is really hard. That's a really hard like value to hold and a truth to have and to get over that and realize that there's so much growth in figuring it out and figuring out what doesn't work for us and things like that. I had a really great piece of advice that a crew lead passed on to me in one of my seasons. I've been very like type A, right? People who know me may not, I guess maybe would expect that. But I was essentially annoying my crew by being hyper vigilant about all the things that my crew lead said. Hey, make sure like, this is what the crew lead said, you're not doing it right or something like that. And I just felt like it was exactly channeling that. If we were all doing things right, then we were succeeding as a crew. And if we weren't, then we weren't succeeding as a crew. And
you're failing as a leader.
Yeah. And so that meant like me as a fellow crew member was like wrapped into this thing. And the great piece of advice that he gave me was that everybody's got a limited amount of like space to take what you have to say. And it really depends on your relationship to them, whether you're somebody's boss or you're somebody's coworker or you're a supervisee and the relationship you have with them. There's so many different dynamics that come to play. And he essentially said, like, sometimes you just have to be aware, because if you say too much or you push too hard, people stop listening, and they may not listen when you have a really important message. And it was just the greatest piece of advice. And I think it took me a couple of years to really kind of work with that and figure it out. I mean, it definitely had an immediate impact, but it's been something that's really cool that I like to share with folks. And I think me not wanting the rest of the crew to fail really inhibited my relationship with them and our growth as a crew and their own growth as people as well. So yeah, that kind of carried that with me. It was super cool.
I think what you just said is profound. Okay, so also on a side, like, I've been like deep into Buddhism for a while now. And I've done tons of therapy and and a huge Brene Brown fan. So, shame. We're all giggling. We're like, God. But here's the deal. Like, what you just said was amazing, because so we've been joking about fragile egos and how it's like somehow trail building seems to be like a magnet for, everyone's egos is very delicate because we got to try hard and be hard and do hard things. And it's like, what wounds are we covering up with this? Telling people they're doing something wrong again and again and again and again because we want them to do it right. That's just like a fast ticket down the shame spiral. Like you're like, no matter what your childhood was, that's not putting you in a good space. So like that is really profound though, thinking about, so say the crew leader ends to be sort of harping on everyone and what they're doing wrong because they want to succeed and not like, I don't want to be a failure, but like they care about the project, but that kind of cascades down to like accidentally just triggering everyone's like, oh, I'm failing. And then you don't feel like you're doing it right. You don't feel like you belong. And I feel like you probably have something to add to this, Erin. I'm just listening to the ramble. Well, like, I want to take a second because, like, think about how that is relevant to a lot of the things we talked about here in this room. Because how do we make things more inclusive? How do we make people feel like they belong? Partially is like you don't want to feel shame trying to do this thing that you came out to do and learn. So how do you teach that in a leadership way?
It goes back to when you're in fourth grade, when you don't, before you learn that it's wrong. Like, have we talked about that?
Yeah, we did a little bit. Like by the time you're 10, you're starting to become self-aware of like, I'm doing this wrong and therefore I don't want to do it.
So if you like I love watching kids just like be outside because they exist. There's not like that shame factor. There's not that judgment or like that fear that they're doing something wrong. They're just like having joy.
They're kind of pure.
Yeah. And so like, I mean, everything is connected, but it like goes back to our education system and just like giving kids the support that to like be their true selves and never, I mean, yeah, what I'm about to say is like never going to happen, but we can try.
We're here to change the world.
To never learn that shame or that fear or that like judgment, to just like be their true selves and just like show up in whatever way they want to be. And I do feel like, I mean, maybe it's just like optimism, but I think that things are changing. Like, and just like, hopefully that transitions into the trails field where it's like, oh, it's a masculine field. Like, I can't do this. It's like, I like working outside. I want to work outside. That like shift in.
Well, and the whole not learning shame, I think there's a lot of space here for all of us, the listeners, people in this room, everyone here at the conference, everyone in the trails world, to ask yourself, like, why am I being hard on this person? Why did I just quip on that person? Why am I like being a bulldog up and down the line, like telling people everything they're doing wrong? Is it because I don't want to feel shame for failing today? Right? Like that inner question of like, why am I doing this? How can I create that space to where like, I'm the parent in the room, watching the playground scene where there's a 3 and 4 year olds and the parents keep coming in, telling the kids how to play. They're interjecting. Shame. Right. So can you foster a space where people their true selves can actually be out there doing the work and learn how to do it well. And us as leaders, because like I'm kind of goofy, but for a long time I had to be really super serious and like keep it together and not giggle at all, doing saw training because I'm a small female teaching men how to run chainsaws. And then when I realized like, no, actually I can be completely ridiculous and it's a lot better because that's kind of who I am.
Well, I think your message carries farther when you're your authentic self. And if you're trying to be someone that you're clearly not, that message comes across too.
And I think it lets the people on your crews, because like we can use the crew term just very generically, right? Like whether it's a paid crew, volunteer crew, agency staff, like modeling that lets them kind of find their way. Because they're not only just learning, this sounds very deep, they're not just learning the technical skills, but they're also learning how to be, right? They're learning how to be in this space and in this industry, right? Because it is kind of male dominated and there is kind of some archetypes, regionally. And it's like, if you can kind of find your authenticity in this space, it's more likely you're going to stay in this space. Because it takes a lot of energy to like not be yourself. Hi, ADHD. So if you can kind of find that sweet spot of like interacting well with the fellow humans and allowing yourself to be a little more authentic. And as a leader, I think it's uncomfortable sometimes to let people be that way. It's making a face. What you got?
I know, I'm making a face.
So good.
Well, it's just funny because it just brings up so many memories. And
Bring them up.
Yeah, so I had a crew. I was just in Argentina again this winter, and my role was a crew leader, and it was to make sure that I was like getting the project done and fostering a safe environment. And it's a role that I've kind of stepped away from for a long time, and I jumped back into because I used to be a crew leader for SCA, and actually Addie works with one of my old co-leads. And I think I drove him nuts because I drove him nuts.
You should laugh into the microphone, Addie.
Well, she knows who I'm talking about. And I think I can be overwhelming sometimes because I am definitely like, no, this has to be perfect, blah, 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 blah. But so I just had I think might be my last crew.
Someone's got to be that way.
Someone's got to be that way. So I know I drove him nuts, but this was, like, I think it was at least 15 years ago that we led a crew together. But so I just led my last crew, and it was only 4 folks. And they're like, at the end of it, we were all reflecting, and they're like, who's the most chill personality? And I got voted the most chill personality, which if you knew me, would not be the case at all. And Addie is laughing hysterically right now.
That's amazing.
I know, right?
I didn't know Erin 15 years.
I know. But I think this finally, and this has taken me a while, and I can't believe I'm admitting this, but like I finally figured out like how to, at least I feel like I did on this crew, how to support everyone as an individual, find their strengths, push those strengths up, and let them be their authentic self without trying to control the situation or like the food or like the project too much. I mean, I'm always going to be picky about quality, but there's certain ways you can go about that. But I don't know
how to attain that.
Yeah. And so I don't know what happened, but it was just sort of amazing because I think when I stepped back as a leader and I just kind of noticed those things about those different individuals, they all stepped up into their roles. And they, took on things that they might not have been comfortable with before. And I wish that I had known that when I was, 23 leading SCA crews, in the backcountry with high school students. I think I definitely drove some of my participants crazy because I just needed a little bit more chill.
Well, but it's not even chill, though. It's not chill. It's, we just said it, allowing people to come into themselves. I mean, the analogy again is like letting people fail to get better. It's also it's letting them experiment with like how to be in this work that they're doing in that team, that whole dynamic. And so the chill, I'm just like, chill, is that the right word? But you're not cranking down on them, expecting them to be something they're not, right? You're letting them like flourish.
And fail. and also
And have support when they fail.
Yeah,
though.
and have support, have the proper support that they need when they fail.
And you're keeping an eye on things such that things aren't irreversibly at a failure point.
Yeah.
You're
not circling the drain.
Right. And there's a light touch to that too. But that also takes time. I mean, it takes time to get there as a crew leader. And it's interesting. Okay, so guys, we just have provided you free crew leadership training to the world. But it takes time to get there as a crew leader. And so I also do higher ed stuff. And so I'm constantly thinking how do we teach this? Right. And how do we provide space to let people learn this as crew leaders? Because you have to do it again and again and again. You can't just read it and do it. And I was also joking to myself. I'm like, you just applied self-training to crew leadership. Right. Meeting people where they are and letting them do their thing.
I think that's one of the things that has been really hard about. There are I guess this is just probably an inaccurate generalization, but the trails industry, people aren't focused on, and I hate the word soft skills, but we talked about that earlier in this room. It's those I don't want to say techniques, but the skills to give your crew members the support that they need to succeed isn't always showing them how to do the work or this is how you use a rock bar. This is how it's hey, how are you doing? Let's check in.
It's emotional skills.
Yeah. And in a field that's very heavily male dominated and very heavily masculine dominated, I definitely have put a lot of that, pushed that down because I'm oh, I can't show that's weakness if I check in with people and see how they're doing. And it's no, that's just people are people and they would need to know that they are supported and have the tools, both the trail tools, but also the emotional tools to get through really shitty situations.
Story time.
Not going there.
No. Well,
give me another drink.
No. But here's the deal, right? Okay, so the Forest Service's new Thinking Sawyer thing, we're nodding our head with the switchback framework, which I love, hook, line, and sinker. That changed my life. It's all about feelings and emotions, right? And it's checking in with people. And that was a magic we discovered working with, not we alone, everyone, but working with volunteer groups, right? And whether it's people you see all the time or a group of new folks, checking in, and modeling, sharing how you're feeling. And you guys have probably heard pieces of the story before you last night. But so we do a lot of hazard tree work and it's volunteer crews, right? And so Robert and I lead it and we have folks who are regulars, but there might be new folks out there. And it's rare that I'm the sole leader. It's usually us doing it together. But, one of my best ones that I led, I was a hot mess. I was super anxious and I was feeling like I was going to be judged very harshly for the whole thing. And, because trauma. I was just okay, I'm just going to speak my feelings. We got everybody doing, together. We're doing the safety talk. And I was just a ball of anxiety. And not so much that I couldn't saw and run the thing, but I was just what's in my head? And I'm okay, guys, look, I'm actually pretty anxious about today. And here's why. We have a tight timeline. We have a lot of trees to get down. But look, we don't have to get them all down. All right. And if I notice that I'm really barking at you, it's because I'm worried about time, but that's a watch out sign, right? I need to dial it down and we need to make sure we're all on the same page. And I modeled sort of saying what I was worried about that day and spoke a little more about how we're going to keep things safe and had good communication. That was one of the best hazard tree trips we did because we had really good communication and really good checking in with each other. And, again, it was just modeling sort of the emotional safety and just for folks who aren't hip with the whole lizard brain things, our emotional self is the oldest part of our brain. The thinking part's new, which is why we screw it up all the time. We like to think we're so logical. All of our decision making and behavior is driven by emotion. So bringing it into the trail space and modeling it, and people pick up on it. They will model it back and your crews run better of just checking in with everyone and, letting people say, I'm annoyed. what you annoyed about? Blah, 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 blah. And I feel like you're just harping on me. It's like, sure, yeah. Like, okay, let's dial it back for a second. And the rest of the day goes better, because they were able to tell me that I was annoying them. That can be really annoying. Rebekah, you just like changed the whole tone of this. What else you got? What was some things? This is your first conference and the first time, because this is the third time we've had this sort of room full of trail builders for Erin and I and some others that were here today. What were some things that stood out to you today that were either surprising or you're just like, yes? Don't edit any of that out. No. We're modeling real people here.
This podcast is sponsored by Coke. You have to cut it out now. The drink.
No lines.
Gosh, I feel like I'm just taking a lot of it in. This being my first conference. I think just like being in a room with so many other folks specialized in the field, I think, I don't know if other folks feel this way, but I can start to feel pretty special, in my little region, and in our individual mission of our organization or the work that we do. And I think that's great. And it's also cool to come together and hear about how there's so many folks doing it and that there's so many different ways of doing stuff too. And I think it's been interesting how much of the conference it maybe has been about biking trails so far, which as an organization that works in wilderness, bikes are mechanized transport, which is not allowed in wilderness to protect the quality of that wilderness. And so I think there's been some like kind of in one ear, out the other of things that don't apply to the work that I do or our programs, but there's been several things that do apply, which is cool. And I think in the vein of our conversation about women in the field, it's also cool to see a good number of women. Obviously maybe not obviously if people aren't
here walking around.
Yeah, here walking around, but there's a lot more men for sure than women, but it's cool to hear other folks' stories and their specialties and the roles that they hold and all of that stuff. So I think it's cool to connect. I think it's felt really empowering in the last 4 years, kind of transitioning from field crew positions, seasonal positions into a more managerial role and supervisory role, more administrative, to have support from other folks. There's been plenty of times where I've called different folks that I've met and asked them questions about how they do things. And a number of them are women, and it just seems it's cool to have those connections and stuff. And I think being at a conference like this allows for more of that connection, more accessibility to resources, and I don't know, hopefully, I guess, more representation in the field too.
I wanted to do some math, and I was going to do that while you were talking, but I was like, that's going to be distracting. So for the listeners, we have 600 people here, 700 people?
Yeah, it's 375. Thereabouts, plus or minus.
I'm going to take a rough stab and say maybe we have generously maybe 50 women in attendance. Okay. So if I do 50 divided by, what'd you say, 365?
She did that math in her head.
It's so hard. So 13%. That's double. I wasn't there. So just over 10%, which is definitely more than we had in Bentonville, which was the last PTBA one. But it was under 10% at the ITS, which was surprising. So it's interesting. I'm conscientious that I set a timer and then I think I accidentally just shut it down. No. So I want to think about how to sort of pull this together and wrap up this amazing episode of Trail EAffect. Mistakes were made. So don't do it.
I was going to say they gave you the mic, so.
Never again. So PTBA, the Professional Trail Builders Association, we've been talking about sort of working on some of the equality, and I'm not even sure if we're working on equity yet, but working on some of the, I would say, our workspace, right? Our workspace in trails. Like, how do we improve that? And, we have a workforce issue, right? We don't have enough people coming out to work. And then once they come out to work, how do we keep them, right? And this right here is part of the sauce. People feeling like they belong. And also, not like a men versus women thing, but like everyone feeling like they have a place and can be their natural selves. And, it's something that's important to PTBA. And it's an interesting nut to crack, right? We're not a highly standardized industry. It's we chuckle. So it's very organic, right? At the moment, it's a very organic process. It's folks who are interested in making a difference and helping sort of make this more inclusive. And in some ways, it's leading upward and outward, as far as modeling it for either the folks we work for or alongside, and work is in air quotes because we're also talking about volunteer organizations. But think, Martha, where were you going with that? I wanted to hand the mic over to you guys, which is not really happening because everyone has their cool make stand, of things that you guys are sort of taking away from this afternoon, from us all talking together, of really open-ended, but some options like, what do you want to be working on this year towards this? Or what was kind of an aha moment, or things that kind of take back to your own workspace? There's other questions that could be asked, but I'll stop talking and just hand it over to you guys. We're all thinking really hard.
When we were sitting around the circle and Val was telling her story about how she got started on running machinery, Valerie Naylor, I'm not going to remember the name of her company. I think it's Valerie Naylor Trail Specialist. You can edit that out. But phenomenal excavator, operator, travels the world, building phenomenal trails.
She's a little older than us. She's roughly, she's our age.
I think she's about our age.
Okay.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. But anyway, so she was chatting about how she first got started, and she, gave the example of like being able to spend time on the machine. And so it had me reflecting a little bit of like, how did I start running a machine? Well, I sat in a parking lot and sat with a gravel pile at the end of the workday and got the basic overview from Peter Jensen, and got the basic overview, and everyone took off, and I just moved a scoop from one side of the pile to the other for like hours, because that's what I wanted to learn at the time. Like, I had done a bunch of backcountry work at that point. I had done Green Mountain Club, BYCC, SCA, like all of those things. And then jumped on this crew in North Carolina doing technical stonework, which I loved, which I was pretty good at the time. But I wanted that machine piece. And so part of that was me making sure that I created time for myself, but also having the right mentors in Peter to help me run machinery and give me the option to sit on a machine and mess some stuff up, but also, learn how to fix that too.
I want to add to that. I have a corollary. And I think this is useful to people listening of like, how do we implement this out in the field? So big picture, as a trainer, if you're going to set up space for someone to just noodle around and maybe fail a little bit, it needs to be, they can't screw it up too bad, right? So like that parking lot's a really good place to do that. It's a bunch of gravel.
It was on pavement and I was not supposed to hit the pavement. Oh, don't worry, I didn't hit the pavement.
Right. But that's different than being on a steep slope.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of the variables are out of there. And I have to say, me also having alone time with the saw, I was not totally unsupervised. We were still under, 2 people in the area. But
disclaimer there, Martha. Make sure you get that in there.
Don't edit that out. But we were bucking,
because Dan's listening
all the time. All the Dans. Yeah, we were bucking, huge big oaks that we'd brought down earlier that day. And they're forest oaks, they're tall, and the crown's just all at the top. And it was rocky, so I had to have a lot of saw handling, but nothing complex. I had my wedges, I had my axe, I had my saw, and I had nothing but time. And I could just take my time. And no one was over my shoulder. And that had been the problem. The other person on scene was, he could hear me, kept checking on me, but he wasn't breathing down my neck, telling me everything I was doing wrong every minute, which had been a problem because he wants me to do well. Right. And it was just that for me personally, it also worked well to have some alone time with the machine at hand, which at the time was a saw, to just mess it up, fix it, mess it up, fix it, do it right, mess it up, fix it, do it right. So I think it's something that's actually pretty easy to implement if you're thinking ahead. And
it allowed me to like create other questions. Like, if this happens, can I do this? Sometimes also I just did it and saw what happened, But so bringing that back. So thinking about like how I learned in that parking lot, just moving soil, and then, excavating in the middle of John Dillon Park in the Adirondacks for a trail up there is like this environment that my mentor created for me, and like using some of the things that I knew worked well for me. And so in my teaching is like, how do I create that environment for other people to learn? And how does that adapt to my like teaching style as well? So creating those spaces as a mentor is something that I look back on my mentors and I take those good pieces for, and then I take my learning style and then I try to teach as many people as I can, because, I was the kid that was obsessed with trail work since high school, and I found every single way that I could do it. And I didn't stop when I was in college, and my degree was in park management, and I thought that was working for the Forest Service or the Park Service, and I was like, no, that's fine. I don't want to be an interpretive ranger. I'm going to build trails forever. And I was stubborn in that. So I'm the dork that will keep doing it, but I'm also the dork that wants to help that next generation have some of the opportunities that I didn't have and foster them in a way that is the most successful for them. And I might fail at that, but I'm not going to stop trying.
But it's rinse and repeat. And by the way, dorks run the world, even in trails. We're the ones that get good at things, right? You took the Mac.
As someone who has learned stone techniques from Erin, you don't fail. You're fucking badass. I'm so great at it.
So what are some of the things, again, any question you want to answer, create your own question, but let's sort of like in the context of things that were talked about today and carrying forward either within the next project or this coming year or so.
One thing that we talked about a little in our session, our women's session, chatting about stuff, was about our representation across the board kind of in this industry, and not necessarily like us in our roles, but also like media wise and what's projected to the public. And I feel like I've had this conversation with different folks before, but even taking that conversation and thinking back to one of the PowerPoints that we saw earlier in the day and noticing that so many of the bikers in one of them was all men. And there was like at least one picture of a woman, but she wasn't on a bike, but she was holding a bike and like touching a big tree in this kind of like, whoa, nature and cool. And I think so much of it can be so subconscious at times. And I think in order to try and create the kind of world that we want folks to know exists, we have to be really intentional about what we put forth. And I get it that maybe most of the bikers out on these trails may be men, probably are men, unless there's like some big initiatives going on getting women out there. But even in this kind of setting, I may internalize what I see on that screen, not talking about gender disparities in these spaces, and think like, oh, I'm better at enjoying nature than I am like doing these crazy bike jumps. I don't bike at all to know what any of the terms are.
You're doing great.
Thank you so much. But I think even in that, I was thinking about maybe photos that I've chosen to post on my organization, social media, and like, the ones of this like ripped person like pulling on a crosscut saw are like so cool. But most of the time that's going to be like two men on the saw or something. And unless it's like, oh, it's Women's Day or something. Like we got to make sure we have like a photo of some women and stuff. And so
You're looking hard to find a photo.
Right. So I think this like, like creating a vision of what we want the world to be instead of it super reflecting what we see out there now without it being tokenizing. I think that's the other end of the spectrum that is dangerous.
Tokenizing's tricky. I wanted to empower folks out there listening in their organizations or whatever. Be the squeaky wheel, because I've become the super annoying person. Like, hey, we literally have only dudes on bikes in this publication that we're doing. It's like, do we have anyone who's just not representing as a male on a bike? Like anyone who's also not touching a tree. And just rinse and repeat, whether it's our trail photos for like volunteer days, but like be the person, like if you see it, say it. Like just ask, like, hey, what else we got? Because it's just off people's radars sometimes. Yeah. Just make it up.
Weird. I know.
What do you want to do to save the world this year?
Well, just what Rebekah said is also I resonate with. We recently did some hiring within our company and lost some of our diversity, and unfortunately like just didn't have a good candidate pool to choose from. And so that's something that I want to try to work harder at, is like whether that means like having a presence on social media. Follow to How is Trails. We'll have more of a presence on Instagram because I'm taking it over. or like what maybe it means like posting jobs on, like, I don't know where the jobs got posted. I wasn't a part of the hiring process. But also maybe that means like me stepping up and saying like, hey, can I be a part of this hiring process? So yeah, maybe someone doesn't have all of these hard skills. We can teach all of these hard skills. But if like we can have someone that offers, like, has a great attitude and wants to learn and do all of these things, like,
and has the emotional intelligence to actually be a good contributing part of a crew, or the potential to be a really empathetic crew leader, you can teach a lot of the hard skills. Like we're all nodding.
It's true. And like the other thing that just came to mind is like, I think for me, I was really fortunate in how I came up as a trail builder and like had people in the right places at the right time to make me realize that like this is a career and like I can do this. And this is like, there's so many options and such a wide spectrum. And like I happen to fall in the private sector, and like I'm happy where I am. I used to think that I wanted to like work for a nonprofit land trust, and like I still think I do, but also right now I really like getting the paychecks I get working for a private company. And like, not that it's all about money, but just like knowing that I think something I think about, I don't know if anybody here knows Liz Grades. She's amazing. She works for IMBA. I got the chance to talk to her this summer. She also lives in the Adirondacks. We were just talking about like the importance of social media and just that it plays a role in broadening the spectrum, like validating trails as a trade. And that like...
Say it again.
Trails is a trade. Trails is a trade. Yes. It's a trade, people. Like your plumber, your carpenter, and it's just like valued. And yeah, I think there's so many people who... I remember this one time. I'm going down a tangent. I'm sorry.
You're good. We're on a podcast.
My partner and I were in Arches, and we were hiking behind this couple. I think it was a mom and a son. And the mom said to her son, she was like, "Look at these stairs that like have always been there." And I was like, okay. So that's like how 90% of the world views like features. And I mean, they were just like, I think we were in Arches, and I'm pretty sure they were just like cut into the bedrock.
By the hand of God.
Yes, yes. But it's just like that mentality that it's like, oh, these things have always been here. Or like, and I get it on the trail. Sometimes people are like, oh, I've always wondered, like, who does this? And it's like, yeah, I'm glad that you're thinking about that. But like, go one step further and be like, hey, I can do that. Or like, my kid can do that. Or like, whatever. I have a friend who loves working outside. Someone said it that like conservation field for women can be a really strong pull to the trails. And I feel like that's an area that I like want to try to get our company to like see if we can find people in.
Yeah, and the whole sustainable trails concept is it's a conservation leaning approach to making these lands accessible, right? So we don't wreck them in so many ways. Absolutely. Oh, guys, this is so amazing. Oh, so I think we could talk forever, and yet none of us have eaten dinner yet. So for all the listeners, oh man, this has been super exciting. The Trails conferences are always, it's just people who are really exuberant and, we're here because we're passionate. And it's really nice to get a bunch of people in the room talking about stuff. Really want to thank Josh for sharing the podcast with us tonight. And yeah, any final words from anybody?
Hit that subscribe button.
Link, like, subscribe.
They always say that on podcasts.
You're going to say to use this clip at the end of every one of your podcasts.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a big deal, and it's really, really appreciate being able to like share these conversations with the wider trails community, because I think we all have the opportunity to be a conscientious voice, to bring people in, pull people into the conversation. And you never know, sometimes you do, but the people who have been those key mentors, whether it was for years or for an afternoon, we all have the opportunity to be that person. Right. And you don't always know the impact you have until sometimes people can actually see you later and like, oh my God, do you remember blah, blah, blah? And you don't, because you've had a lot of trainings or a lot of interactions. But how exciting is it to understand the impact we all have like on each other's lives? So Peter Jensen probably to this day regrets ever met me and teaching me about
He probably regrets meeting me when I was in high school.
Bad choices.
Bad choices, Peter.
All the time.
All the time.
Oh, man. And just, and just a big thanks to all the folks. We mentioned a few names today, and if it wasn't for some of these fantastic mentors of all the genders have really opened doors for us. And it's how we're here today. Right. None of us got here because of our like bootstraps and metal, right? Like it's a team effort. And I think we forget that sometimes, because sometimes our bad experiences like stand out, but we're here because of our good experiences. All right. I'm just going to keep talking if I don't stop. So there we go.
Thank you for listening. If you like what you have heard, please take the time to share these shows with others. Sharing these shows will help create awareness of both the guests who have taken the time to be on the show and the podcast series itself. Also, if you're new to the Trail EAffect Podcast, check out our ever-expanding library of episodes. If you listen to the Trail EAffect Podcast on Apple or Spotify, please don't forget to leave a rating and review, as this is one of the best ways to show our support for the Trail EAffect Podcast. Also, don't forget to check out Cooley Creative at www.dudejustsendit.com. For additional ways to help support the Trail EAffect Podcast, check out the affiliate links tab at the Trail EAffect website, where you'll find links to Kettle Mountain Apparel, Worldwide Cyclery, and Trail One components. By using the affiliate links found at www.traileeffectpodcast.com, a small commission will come back to the podcast, which will help keep this thing going. This podcast has been edited and produced by Evolution Trail Services. Thank you again for listening.